How did I get into medical school in Australia? So I've been reading your comments and I've been reading your messages, and I'm happy to see that some of you are interested in hearing my story. And I'm here to tell you about everything about my journey to med school. From when I first realized that I wanted to do medicine, to my high school experience, to what my university was like, and I'll give you some tips along the way. To those of you out there who are unsure of what to do, or who are doubting yourself about the whole medical school process and getting in and that sort of stuff, I'm here to tell you that you are more than capable, and that getting into med school is more than achievable so long as you have the passion and the perseverance. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Sebastian, a medical student from Australia. And before we start, I just wanted to say thank you, because as of this morning, we just hit 4,000 subscribers, and I really can't believe the amount of growth that the channel has got over the recent weeks. So thank you so much for all the support, and welcome to all the new subscribers out there. Yes, I do read the comments, and I'm really glad that you guys are enjoying the videos and that you guys are finding them useful. So with all that out of the way, let's go back to where it all started. Ever since I can remember, medicine was always on my mind. It was always something that I was interested, or at least I considered and wanted to do. I remember my mum telling me when I was very young, probably about 10 or 11 years old, I'd always, whenever they asked, what would you want to do when you're older, whenever family would ask or friends, I'd always say that I wanted to be a doctor. And when asked why, I very much said what any other little kid would say, is that I wanted to help people. But it wasn't until mid-high school when I knew that I wanted to do this. So back when I was younger, my younger brother had a serious bacterial infection. He had osteomyelitis in his hip, and that later became septic, and he was in ICU, the intensive care unit, for a couple of weeks. He was in the hospital for almost a year. And that whole time in my life and his life, and that process of watching him go through such a serious condition and then start to get better, and then all the rehabilitation, the in and out of hospital, the outpatient, inpatient care, and just seeing him change over time, and my interaction and our family's interaction with all the doctors throughout that whole process. That was when I knew that this was something that I wanted to get involved with. I explicitly remember our interactions with many of the doctors when they'd first tell us about the diagnosis, when they used to talk us through what was the next course of action or treatment. And what you picked up, or what I picked up on, was how your life was immediately affected just by the subtle things that an individual doctor might do. It could be their personality, it could be what they said, it could be how they said it, the body language, or just did they come at the right time? Did they have that right tone of voice? And so all these little intricacies, all these traits that these doctors had, you picked up on what you liked and what you disliked. But overall, their main goal was to get my brother better, and that's what they did. Seeing all the team work together, that was just something that I knew I wanted to do, I wanted to be involved with. And that sort of brings us to the realm of senior year of high school. So for those of you outside of Australia, every student has to take the high school certificate in their final year of high school. And at the end of it, once you finish all your exams, you will get a mark, and it's called the Australian Tertiary Admissions Rank, or ATAR. And this mark will determine what universities that you can get into, if you're going to make the course requirements and the cutoffs and that sort of thing. And so I'm in high school, and I know that medicine is competitive, so I've got to get the best ATAR, or the best score I can, to get in. And at this point, I also know that there's another test called the UMAT that I have to sit. And yes, I know what you're thinking, it's no longer called a UMAT, it's called the UCAT. So they've changed the test structure. I guess that just shows how old I am. And so I was a very naive student back then. I knew that it was competitive, but I didn't know how competitive getting into med school really was. So I tried my best in school. The subjects I took were mainly focused around the sciences. So I did biology, I did chemistry, I did physics, I did extension 2 maths. So I studied really hard, and I performed reasonably well in the ATAR. But the UMAT was a whole nother beast. I will never forget this day when the lady calls out on the announcements that there's 15 minutes left to go in the exam, and I look down at my answer sheet, go to the question that I'm up to, and see 88. So as every smart kid would do, I just circled a row of B's. And that was the UMAT. I got out of there feeling pretty horrible, but what can I do? There was a lot, and I mean a lot of students that would sit the UMAT. And I'm sure that to this day, there's still a lot of students that sit the UCAT. And what you find is that in high school, there's a lot of people that are considering medicine as a career pathway. And you'll find that a lot of people will do this admissions test, And because it's scored based on ranks and based on percentiles, a lot of people won't perform in the competitive range to get into universities. And what happens, and what I notice, is that some of my friends, some people that I knew that weren't super committed, that saw this medicine as a potential thing but weren't really passionate about it, they sort of dropped out. They didn't continue it. They decided to do other things. They went on to other degrees. They went on to other career pathways, and they're loving it now. It's truly the passionate ones and the ones that have the right reasons for doing medicine are the ones that stick around, that repeat, that sit the UMAT again, or that think about doing postgraduate pathways. And so the first thing that I want to say to you guys is that you need to be doing medicine for the right reasons. If you're coming from a family of doctors and you feel influenced to do medicine because your whole family does, or if you think that you're going to be the top cardiothoracic surgeon in the region and you're going to be making so much money, those are not good reasons. People are going to have all sorts of reasons, but whatever your motivation, whatever your reason, it's going to be unique to you. And it can still be similar to someone else, but it's going to be unique to you. Take a step back when you're preparing for your UMAT and when you're studying super hard to get into med school to think, why am I doing this in the first place? Is it for the right reasons? And if it is for the right reasons, this journey or this process won't be grueling. It won't be something that you dread doing. It will just be there, and it'll just be an obstacle that you overcome. So here I am, a student that has just performed poorly in the UMAT. I didn't get any undergraduate offers, and so I think to myself that I'm going to try to do a bachelor's degree, which brings me to the start of my university experience. So like every student that didn't get into undergraduate medicine, I did medical science. So here I was, still a teenager, and I'm starting medical science. I decided to major in physiology and pathology because I thought that those would be subjects that would best set me up as foundational studies. And so it was at this point that I started actually researching the requirements or what I had to do to get into med school. So for many of the Australian and the UK postgraduate universities, you have to sit this mammoth, huge exam called the GAMSAT. And I've done a video on my story about the GAMSAT and some tips that I have, so I'll put it somewhere here. And I won't talk too much about it, but I knew that I had to prepare for this GAMSAT. I needed to do well. I didn't do well on the UMAT for the undergraduate route, so this was my chance to redeem myself. So in Australia, there's two main pathways to get into medical school. There's the high school leaver route, where straight after high school, you'll get into an undergraduate program. Usually they're a bit longer, 5 to 6 years, and you'll go straight there. You'll start with doing 1 or 2 years of basic biomedical science, and then you'll move into the more clinical stuff. And then you have the postgraduate route, which is when you have to complete a prior degree, bachelor's degree, master's, whatever, and then you can apply afterwards. I looked up the different universities that you could apply for in the postgraduate route. So in Australia, you have your independent universities like the one that I'm at now, University of Sydney, where you apply to them directly. And then you have a consortium of universities under the GEMSAS admissions process, which you'll apply to that consortium, and then you'll put your preferences, and depending on your marks, you might be offered one of your preferences. There's also portfolio universities which require you to submit a portfolio outlining your achievements, whether that be academic, personal, sporting, your community and your volunteering work, and just anything about you. And at this time, I also researched the GPA or the scores that you'll need to get in university to be competitive. And the GEMSAS unis, for example, did a scaling GPA. So depending on your marks, they might scale it up or they might scale it down. So in my case, I knew that I wanted to be aiming for 75 to 80% in my subjects. So that's roughly a distinction or a low-high distinction. So I would aim for those sort of marks. Anyways, fast forward to my final year of my degree. I applied for all the universities that I could, and I got back one offer for Griffith University. And so I did the interview with little preparation. I was honestly surprised that I even get an offer, so I didn't prepare very well for it. And it really showed when I went into the interview. I blanked on a lot of questions. I wasn't really prepared about talking about certain topics. What I found was that because I hadn't verbalized anything to myself or to friends, that although the ideas were all in my head, they just didn't come out right. And when I was speaking them, they kind of just got jumbled and went all over the place. So for those of you who are currently in a position where you're about to finish your degree and you're getting to that point when you're applying or sitting rounds of interviews, you really need to start thinking about, am I prepared for the interview itself? So I've got a whole heap of interview videos somewhere on my channel which you can check out if you want more information. But really, my biggest tip is to start vocalizing your thoughts. Practice how you're going to talk about your ideas, because unless you say them out directly, you're not going to form those connections in your brain. It's not going to seem natural. And I know for me, just with recording these type of YouTube videos, they were unnatural for me at the start, and I feel like I'm slowly getting better at them, but even I am trying to practice every time. So just by vocalizing your thoughts with your friends, with your family, doing mock interviews, that sort of stuff, you're just going to get better at saying your ideas off the cuff. And when the interviewer asks you a question that throws you off, you'll at least be able to redirect yourself and redirect your thoughts so that you're making a lot more sense and you're flowing better. So I'm not trying to make this video a interview tips video, but really I think it's important for anybody that's striving to get into medicine is to start taking on these characteristics of being able to verbalize your thoughts, being a good communicator. You also have to be empathetic. The interviewers are looking for empathy. In the world of technology, when AI and machine learning is becoming so good, that something that will never be able to take over is that human nature, is the human interaction, the bedside manner, the way that you're going to communicate to a patient and make them feel. I think there's a really, really good quote that I heard once, is that a patient won't remember what you said to them, they won't remember what you did to them, what you gave to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I definitely can understand that coming from my brother's experience and how doctors would make myself, my brother, and my family feel. And so developing those traits, and that was really another kicker for me to go through the postgraduate route, was I wanted to mature a little bit more. I wanted to become more experienced, because comparing myself to where I was 5 years ago, I've definitely changed a lot. And that will happen to pretty much all of us. And looking at it as if you haven't failed, but you're just waiting for your opportunity to get into med school and to succeed, that's a better outlook than putting yourself down and having self-doubts early. So I did my interview, and 3 weeks later, I got my rejection email. This was such a deflating day for me. I remember opening that up and just feeling down. I felt like, what was the point of trying? I honestly reconsidered my whole life goals. Was this really for me? Am I capable enough? So I've very much been in a position where you think of giving up, you think of switching, but like many of my friends and like many people that I know now, that's the most important point where you have to step up and persevere and keep trying. So you really have to have a strong mindset and the willpower to keep pushing forward and seeing these tests, these exams, these interviews, not as something that will stress you out and that are the be all and end all problems in your life. You have to start seeing them as just obstacles to get towards your final goal. And that final goal will always change. For many people, the final goal is just to get into med school. Once you're there, and I for sure know that feeling, is that once we're here, that's just one part of the bigger picture, one part of the journey. And so your final goal will always change, you'll always adapt, and you have to adapt to these changes. And so now getting this rejection letter, I was just lost for what I wanted to do now that I finished my degree. I had a few options that I thought about, and I decided to end up taking a honours year. So an honours year, for those of you who don't know, I'll try to explain it the best I can, is an extra year added to your degree where you might do a specific research project or you might do extra work. So because I was doing a science honours, I had to look for a project. I did a laboratory-based project in a research institute. And I remember having 2 weeks to apply to the university before the cutoff was met. So I quickly scrambled and looked for a lab team, and I ended up finding a good lab team that I can do my honours project with. And that sort of brought me to the next stage after my degree. For those of you that are in this stage where you're in this uncertain period that you finish your degree, but you haven't been able to get into a med school of your choice, I would consider looking at an honours or extra stuff like this as a perfect opportunity. I found that I learned so many new skills. I made a great group of friends. You get a whole diverse range of networks and connections to people that you know. And it was a completely different feeling to say the standard lectures and tutorials that you get in your undergraduate studies. And you're put in towards more of a working and a professional environment. I had my own little cubicle, a little desk that I would go to every morning. And you just feel like a true professional. You start growing more, you're attending these meetings, you have presentations that you have to go towards, you attend conferences. I'm not saying that this is what every honours experience is going to be like, but this is certainly what it was like for me. And having that, I think it was like one of my biggest years of change. I realized that I can slow down, that this journey to med school is not a race. It really is a marathon, as cliche as that sounds. You really have to be thinking about in the big scheme of things, that 1 year extension or a 2 year extension, if you do a PhD or whatever you decide to do, take a gap year. Honestly, I consider taking a gap year, and I would have if I didn't get in. People love to take a gap year, go on holiday. 1 year, 2 years, it's not gonna make a big difference. What's gonna make a big difference is that you have the passion and you have the perseverance. so that you're always trying. And you really want to do this because it makes you feel happy and it's rewarding and it's something that you're willing to put yourself through the stress. So this honors year is when I did my 4th GAMSAT, and it was my best GAMSAT, and I finally hit the glorious 70, which I'd strived for so long, and that sort of set me up with having a competitive score to apply for my universities. So this time round, I was anticipating at least one interview offer. So I prepared a lot more in advance. Compared to my previous year when I didn't get in through my interview offer, I did so much more practice. I got some friends together, we did group study, we did mock practice, I started researching a wide variety of medical issues, political issues. I just tried to get more well-versed. I kept up to date with the current affairs. And it wasn't perfect what I'm saying is, but I just tried to read more. And I'd suggest to anybody preparing for interviews or thinking about interviews later on during the year that you want to start getting more widely spoken and forming opinions on various topics. And for people saying that they can't do well on the GAMSAT or they can't do well on the interview, I think that is completely wrong. There's plenty of resources out on the internet, online, there's practice material, there's courses that you can do that can really set you up to do well. And so I prepared and we prepared for the interviews that I had. And I got an interview at Sydney University and I got an interview at ANU University, Australian National University. And I had the Sydney one first and I did it. I felt quite good. It wasn't perfect, obviously, it was a little bit choppy. I then had the ANU interview a month later and I had a similar feeling. I prepared well, so I was quite pleased with how I went, and I thought that what I said and how I went could get me over the line. And so when I got back my emails from the universities after these interviews, I had a bit of an unusual experience. I got my letter from the University of Sydney first, and it offered me a place, a bonded medical place, but I was actually ineligible for that place because of my citizenship, because I didn't meet the citizenship requirements, so I couldn't accept it. And I just missed the cutoff for a Commonwealth supported place, or a CSP. And so with no offer from USyd at the moment, I waited on ANU, and fortunately, I was ecstatic. I was over the moon. I finally got an offer for the Australian National University. And so I accepted that, and I'd made all preparation to go to ANU because ANU is in Canberra and I'm currently in Sydney. It's a trip down, so for those of you not in Australia, it's basically moving cities. And so I had to scope out some places that I could be staying, what the campus was like. And it wasn't until 2 weeks before university was meant to start that I got a bump up offer to a Commonwealth supported place at the University of Sydney, and decided to take that position because I was in Sydney. I didn't want to leave home. I had my friends here. So I was a bit of a mixed bag. I was going to go to ANU, and then I got a last minute offer for the University of Sydney. Here I am 5 years later through the whole process, originally starting out as a young kid, wanting to do this field called medicine, and then going through high school and bumming out on the UMAT. It's definitely had its ups and its downs, but it's been a worthwhile journey. I had always had the mindset that if you stick to it, and if you persevere, and if you really try, anything's possible. So far medical school's been really good. First year was definitely an eye-opener in terms of the content and building up towards it, and because you were put into a new cohort of so many new people, you're definitely put into new environments, and the clinical world and going to hospital and seeing patients, that was something so foreign to me. But it's all been very rewarding and it's been very fun. And you do see the difference between in your undergraduate studies and now being in med school. People are more collaborative, they'll offer their notes, they'll help out because we're not competing against each other, we're just trying to help build each other up and do the best that we can so that we're more well-informed and knowledgeable doctors later on. Because as far as I'm aware, for my state in Australia, we are all guaranteed an internship at the end of our degree, so long as we complete all the requirements necessary to graduate. And that sort of removes that sense of competition and facilitates a better sense of collaboration. Well, that pretty much wraps up my journey to medical school. If you had any more questions or wanted to know a little bit more information about the process, or if you're currently going through this process and just want to hear my thoughts on things, feel free to leave a comment down below, or you can also message me on Instagram. I'll put my Instagram somewhere here, so follow me in that and send a message. I'll reply to most, if not all of them. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it useful, interesting, whatever. But if you did, can you please chuck it a like and subscribe to see more content like this? I have plenty more medical school videos on my channel, so be sure to check out those. And if you are in this process of applying or thinking about getting into medicine, best of luck, keep passionate, keep perseverant. You can do it. you are more than capable. But thanks so much for watching, and until next time, this is Sebastian. Stay sharp. So, most of you won't make it to the end and see this, but this wallpaper, I changed it to a plane lifting off, just like you guys are about to lift off and chase your goals. Okay, that was really, really cliche. Alright guys, I've got a special guest appearance. It's this guy. Don't know what to call him, but he's a cutie.